This week in Arsenal, the Gunners defeat Burnley 3-1 at the Emirates. Arteta's men enter the international break in a three-horse title race. Leandro Trossard continues his production at center forward, and January transfer rumors begin to circulate. Let's get into it. Welcome in to This Week in Arsenal, episode 35. It is November 13th, 2023. I am Sham. You can follow me on Twitter/X at Shamsdale. With me, as always, is Sash, whom you can follow on Twitter/X at LTArsenal. And we come to you live after Arsenal's very straightforward 3-1 win against Burnley at the Emirates. Saw us go to second temporarily in the Premier League, and then Liverpool won their game, and Chelsea had a performance of the season, 4-4 against Manchester City at Stamford Bridge. So we're locked in. City has 28 points. We and Liverpool have 27. Liverpool is ahead on goal difference. And so, yeah, it's a good place to be, and we're really excited to talk about all that and kind of the ins and outs of the game, certain performances by the players, and other goings on at the club. But Sash, I just wanted to kind of get your temperature check real quick before we move forward. How you feeling, my friend?
Yeah, doing pretty good. Had a nice weekend. Actually, didn't properly catch the game on Saturday. Of course, I watched the highlights after that. But Saturday was really nice for me. I went to Leipzig to explore the city. Went to the Bach Museum. I'm missing an Arsenal match after a long time, but I also think it was nice to actually go out on a day in the weekend instead of watching football. So that was really nice. And yeah, in good spirits ahead of the week. Normally not so happy when it's Monday, but considering how the weekend went for Arsenal and also Man City dropping points yesterday, I think we can all say that, yeah, it's a good Monday. Also been watching the Cricket World Cup, and India are through to the semi-finals, so I'm really happy with that. And the semi-final is on Wednesday against New Zealand, so looking forward to that as well. So really can't complain, even though it's a Monday and there's still 4 more days to go in the week. Cannot complain. I think it's been great. And yeah, looking forward to the week ahead. How about you, Sham? How have you been?
Good, yeah. I tried to use this weekend to recover from a very busy week last week, and yeah, I mean, everything's good. Just just cruising, kind of bracing for hopefully a much easier week ahead. And yeah, how's the U.S. cricket team doing?
I don't even know if they play cricket in the US, but they're not there in the World Cup because they didn't even qualify for it, um, which is not surprising. But maybe one day
Yeah,
the US will become a force in cricket, like it is becoming a force in football. You certainly have the infrastructure to do it. So I don't see
yeah.
why not. You guys play baseball, you can hit the ball. Cricket is not like, I don't want to spend this episode explaining to you the rules of the game of cricket because I think that's a separate podcast on its own. But I think it's quite similar to baseball. There's a ball, but it pitches on the ground, so then it can move after it pitches on the ground. I think that's the key difference between the two sports. But essentially, yeah, there's a batter, there's a person who throws the ball, and you need to look to hit the ball out of the park. So I don't see why not that US can actually be quite good at this sport. Um, but maybe it's not something for now. It's something for the future.
Yeah, yeah. It would be interesting if we took retired MLB players and try to make a cricket team with them. I think they do okay. I don't
Yeah.
think they'd be like beating the world's best or anything, but yeah,
Yeah.
maybe one day. But we'll move into the Arsenal game and
Yeah.
talk about everything that happened there.
Yeah. Let's speak about the superior sport, which is football, obviously. And I know a lot of Indians would not agree with that, but having followed both the sports, I can say that football greater than cricket. But if Arsenal lose, cricket becomes greater than football. So yeah, I just change my opinion as depending on how my team stroke country is doing. But on that note, like you mentioned, let's get into the Burnley match. Um, I want to speak about Mr. Leandro Trossard and that combination he has with Saka because I think Trossard has scored 6 goals so far this season, right? And all the 6 goals have been assisted by Saka, which to me is crazy. Like I know there are good combinations in football where like Ozil and Sanchez, Cazorla and Podolski, Cazorla and Giroud in like the Arsenal team before that, Fabregas and Van Persie as well during that era. But 6 goals for Saka to assist Trossard is something crazy, if you ask me. Like, when was the last time something like this happened that two people combined for the goal? Like, it's actually crazy to me, and different types of assists as well. Like
Mhm.
Saka's assist to Trossard this time was him winning a ball aerially. Like, I've never seen Saka giving an assist like that. But one thing is quite clear to me, and it's that when Trossard is playing up front, the wide players are also benefiting more. I don't know why this is, because technically on paper, what people will say is that Eddie is a box striker. He's really good in the box. But it seems to me like Trossard is right up there, even in the box, if not better. And not to mention, of course, the overall play that he does to bring others into the game. So, Sham, I wanted to get your thoughts on this. Like, how impressive has Trossard been? And what is it that makes his combination with Saka so special? Because I think it's something really cool. Like, wow, 6 goals.
Yeah. I think back to last January when we lost out to Chelsea in the Mudryk saga, and I
Mm-hmm.
remember for a short period of time being a little bummed that we didn't spend 80 million pounds on Mikhailo Mudryk,
Mm-hmm.
and then we went and signed Leandro Trossard, and I think he finished the season with like 11 assists or something
Yeah.
in only a few months. And that I was I ended the season being supremely grateful that we had him. So I think with Trussard, it honestly kind of reminds me of like that song Van Persie connection that you saw over 10 years ago at this
Oh, the
point.
long ball and volleys. Oh my God.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
those were the bright points of a pretty disappointing season. But yeah, it kind of reminds me of that a little bit. I think the reason why Trossard and Saka have such a good connection is because I think Trossard is generally a better player than Eddie and Nketiah at bringing in the wide men, right? And this is also kind of Jesus' superpower, right? Where Jesus
Mhm.
is able to affect play and bring the best out of Saka and Martinelli and get them involved and allow them to come into more central positions. And I
Mhm.
think Trossard does a lot of that as well. And I think Trossard is he seems to have a bit of a right-sided bias when he plays. He likes to drift over to the right wing, I think, a little bit more than the left. But he
Mhm.
still, I think he still combines pretty decently with Martinelli. So yeah, I just think those two kind of have, a bit of a connection going on. I think Trossard facilitates Saka, and Saka is kind of similar to Trossard, and that both players are creators and finishers, right? And yeah, so I think that allows both players to really adapt to one another. And if one of them's in a better goal scoring position, they'll play each other in, and yeah, and things along those lines. So yeah, it's been really fun to watch, and I think Trossard is probably the guy that we have to move forward with at center forward until Jesus returns. In most circumstances, I do think there are a couple situations in which maybe Nketiah would still be an intriguing option, but yeah, I think Trossard has enough similar traits to Saka where he understands him very well, and I think he's just a wiser player than
Mhm.
Nketiah is.
Mhm.
Trossard's 28, 29 at this point, has played under some really talented managers in his day, and
Yeah.
now he's under Arteta. So he's a guy who understands the game to a very high level, I think.
Yeah. I think bottom line, you can say Trossard is better than Eddie at football, right? Just at the sport. Like that's just like what you said. I think you said it in a very constructive way that, oh, he's really intelligent, the way he brings others into the game. You spoke about like his experience, of course, working with different coaches. But net, Gabriel Jesus and Trossard are better footballers than Eddie, as harsh as it is. And those couple of situations Eddie might be useful in, if like I think he might be useful if you want to stretch a defense, maybe bring him on
Yeah,
towards the end to get that extra option in the box. But what happens when Jesus, Trossard, and Kai Havertz are all fit. Like honestly, I don't know what's going to happen. Like how we're going to use these players, because I think Arteta picks Eddie based on how he trains in on the training pitch, and he's a great character. No one denies that. But at some point, there's no substitute for quality in football, and it's for this reason why I think that Trossard has to play if he's fit over Eddie. And it's good that Arteta has realized this. I think just like in the past, it's taken some injuries for Arteta to realize what he has to do. I remember back in the day when Willian got injured. Smith Rowe came and made his debut for Arsenal, but Smith Rowe didn't get a chance before that. We were like, come on, Mikel, take a chance. So sometimes these decisions are forced upon him, but yeah, I'm glad that it happened, and at least now we look more functional going forward, even though we're not perfect. And one of the reasons we are not perfect going forward is the midfield. A lot of people have spoken about the need to sign a central midfielder, about the need to sign a number six, um, and maybe allow Rice to go further forward. We'll get into Jorginho, who I think has been really good so far this season. But I want to focus on that number eight position where Kai Havertz was playing. Obviously, a mixed bag from him, and a lot of people seem to be losing patience with him during the game, based on the comments that I was reading. And this sort of ties in as well into a couple of listener questions that we got today. One of it comes from Saka Man on Twitter. Funny display name. You can find him on Twitter at at Ukes. I can't pronounce the ad, but it's like ukemz underscore. Um,
Oh yeah.
yeah, and he says, if we plan for another midfield on Douglas Luiz and a top nine in Ivan Tony, what role is he going to use Kai Havertz? That's one question. We also got another question on Kai Havertz um, from Fat Nutty. You can find him.
Funny names today.
You can find him on Twitter at Masunda. Again, I don't understand the ad. But yeah, he says, What's your take, guys, on Kai Havertz's performance for a coach's view? He also says, is it wise to let ESR go and maybe go for Sancho? And whom do you think we will get in January and why? Okay, there's a lot to unpack here, but we will start off with Kai Havertz and Kai Havertz's performance alone. Sham, what are your thoughts on Havertz? Because honestly, if you look at what Arteta said about Havertz, he said against West Ham, he was one of the best players on the pitch. Um, he also praised him a lot for his performances after against Newcastle, then again midweek against Sevilla. Obviously, Havertz seems to be dividing a lot of opinion. I think some people put him way too down, and some people put him on too high a pedestal. Watchers of the show will say that I fall in the latter category. But the way I see it is, look, Havertz is a striker, okay? He's a second striker or a center forward. He's being made to play a position that is quite unnatural to him. And he's being asked to do things that he's never really done in his career when it comes to like progressing play by passing the ball. That's not something he's ever done in his career. So I wanted to get your thoughts on this, Sham. Like, what next for Kai Havertz? The reason I asked this is because Arsenal want to sign a midfielder. Of course, there's interest in Douglas Luiz. I'm also interested to know what you make of that. But it seems to me like Arsenal are going to spend big on a midfielder like that. We have Rice, we have Odegaard, we have Gabriel Jesus, Trossard up front. We also have Saka, Martinelli out wide. Then it begs me the question, what is Kai Havertz going to do? And it seems to be a weekly topic on This Week in Arsenal where we speak about the role of Kai Havertz. But still, with every week, people get more confused. In my humble opinion, I think we should make him play as the center forward. We should move on from Eddie, play Gabriel Jesus up front. And if Jesus is not fit, play Havertz there. And you play Trossard on the left, or you could even potentially use Trossard as an eight. But I think making Kai Havertz constantly play in an unnatural position, and he's not even scored a single goal from open play this season. Like, let's be real for a second. I'm a big Kai Havertz fan, but this is not good enough for an Arsenal player who cost 65 million to not score a single goal from open play. And I think a large reason for this is because of his position playing so deep. And I know people will say, he's getting opportunities still, he's making runs. But I think that same instinct is not there. Like coming from deep versus being in the box and taking it is quite different. And I think you should just let Kai Havertz do what he's comfortable doing. How do you see it, Sham?
Yeah, I mean, let's to just at the top here. Let's just go ahead and say he hasn't justified the price tag yet, right? And I don't want anyone to take what I'm saying here and construe it as me trying to justify the signing of Havertz at this point in time, right? If I had control over that process and a time machine, I would go back in time and sign someone else.
Aaron Ramsey. Okay.
The which one? The Burnley one or
The man, the myth, the legend from Cardiff.
my heart broke for you when Burnley subbed on Aaron Ramsey at the Emirates. Yeah, I mean I think there were a lot of eights on the market this
Yeah.
summer, right? Lucas Paquetá still hasn't left West Ham. That's an option. City really like him,
Betting
and of
charges,
course you
though.
have
Bad about that. Imagine he signs and they discover something and he's out for a year. Like, what do you do then?
yeah. This is very much a Tonali and Tony situation where let's just wait and see how things pan out on that front before you spend the money on him. But there was him, there was Szoboszlai, there was McAllister. There were a bunch of guys who I think were
James Maz.
available. James Madison, who by far and away right now is the best chance creator in the Premier League. I
But
think
he's
Spurs are
injured as
really
well.
going
He's injured. Kai Havertz is
to.
always available, which is what makes him amazing.
I mean, yeah, I mean, Madison does have a bit of an injury history, which is a knock against him. But my general point is, Havertz is not the guy that I would have signed, but he's here now, and we can't really undo that. We can't turn around and
Control
sell
Z.
him.
Mm.
Sorry.
We can't control Z it, basically.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to try to be constructive. Obviously, we're not, I don't want to do a whole that was a good pass kind of thing. Like I don't want to, take every little action and try to blow it up into some world class thing, right? It's not. So I think there's something there. I
Mm-hmm.
think generally he's had a couple really bad games, and I think he's had a couple really good games, and then everything else has been, 5.5, 6 out of 10. He's I think generally speaking, he's good on the ball in tight spaces.
Mm-hmm.
When he decides to run forward with the ball, I think he looks pretty good. I think obviously, he's a really good out ball for us, really good outlet, really physical, or at least he can deal with physical players. You saw that multiple times against City this year, and I just I think you get this feeling with some players that there's just a little bit more there. That's we're
Yeah.
just scratching the surface, right?
Yeah.
Um, was this against Burnley or West Ham where he took that shot from like the right half space and it almost curled in.
That was against Sevilla, right, in midweek, if I'm
Oh, it
not.
was Sevilla. It was Sevilla. Yeah. Yeah. There's. I said this a few weeks ago, and I'll say it again. I think in an alternate timeline, we're talking about a Havertz who has multiple goal contributions from open play. It's just that I think he has been a little bit unlucky, but also he's clearly playing very tentatively. He's not taking enough risks,
Yep.
and it's taking him way longer than Declan Rice to kind of establish a connection with some of these guys. But I think he's looked pretty good at right center mid. Like Trossard, I think Havertz seems to have something of a connection with Saka. He likes to offer the overlap, which Odegaard doesn't always do. And
Mm-hmm.
like it seems to open things up a little bit more for Saka. And yeah, I just think he needs to start becoming more clinical, right?
Yeah.
He needs to stop missing headers from 5 feet out. And I think if you watch the players around him, it shows that there is starting to be a bit of trust there, right?
Yeah.
Havertz in 59 minutes had 31 touches, which, isn't crazy or anything, But if you compare that to Fabio Vieira, who replaced him, Vieira had 5 touches in 20 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I think I think Havertz's teammates are starting to trust him with the ball. He's starting to get on the ball a little bit more, and I think eventually we'll see something. But I'm not going to sit here and say that Havertz is suddenly going to turn into Lewandowski or anything. So what I would like to do is continue playing Havertz at right center mid, because I think that's been working more than it hasn't.
Hmm.
And I think it's allowing him to function more as that second striker, right? He's getting into the box a lot more often.
Hmm.
Um, I think when Odegaard comes back, I don't think we're going to do this, but I would love to move him over to that left center mid position, because I think he would work very well with Martinelli there. We saw Odegaard score a goal from that position against West Ham,
Yeah.
so I just think that would play into kind of the balance and their characteristics a little bit better. So
Hmm.
yeah, I mean Havertz has been okay, and okay doesn't justify 65 million, but I'm not going to sit here and say that he's been absolutely irredeemable as a player. I don't think that's the case either.
No, I think that's really well put. I think we have to accept the reality that he's an Arsenal player. You can't take a time machine and change the past. And it's about
Yeah.
how we can use him well, because I think there's a player with phenomenal potential there. And it's a question of how you want to use him. And I think we have to give Arteta the benefit of the doubt, because when Martin Odegaard signed for Arsenal, he was struggling as well in his initial matches. You know, like I remember against Crystal Palace, for example, when we drew 2-2 at the Emirates, people were like, why the hell did we sign Odegaard? He can't even play a pass forward. You saw all sorts of takes, right? And I think for Havertz, it's quite similar in some ways, because you can see that there's a player that's like that, but it's just like, as you mentioned, there could have been moments where he could have scored, given an assist, and maybe it would have changed things for him, and people can view it differently as well. On the other hand, also, I think the club has been very nice to him, like the players giving him the penalty, Arteta keeping him on when we are winning, hoping that he would score. We even gave him Win the Dog to take care of on Friday. So the club is doing everything in its power to try and help him. So I think, yeah, it's up to him now to like actually be more decisive. And I get it; it's easier said than done, because sometimes when you see Havertz, you see a player that's low on confidence. Sometimes, especially in the final third, when it comes to shooting or playing that pass, you can see that he's a bit scared to make a mistake, and he's a bit tentative. So really, the question becomes how does he fix it? And I think the way he fixes it is by playing. That's the only way you can do it. And he needs to have that moment, like what he did against City was, I thought, the start of something. He assisted the winner to Martinelli, but after that, he's again played in midfield. Against City, the reason he was so good was because we put him up front. He was winning the duels, relieving pressure. And since that day, again, he's come into midfield. So I think it's a combination of things here. And yeah, I hope we're able to use Havertz in his best position more often. You spoke about Havertz being really good in terms of relieving pressure, winning those duels. But I think a player who's equally instrumental is the player who picks out Kai Havertz, and that's the goalkeeper, David Raya, who I thought had a pretty good match against Burnley, made a couple of good saves. And I thought, he really showed everyone how composed he is and why Mikel Arteta decided to sign him. And related to that also is the future of Aaron Ramsdale. We have a question here from Lalit Kaushik. He says, do you think Ramsdale will leave this January? So Sham, lots to unpack here. What did you first of all make about David Raya's performance? Do you think that's a step in the right direction for him? Because I think personally the pressure on him is ridiculous. Every single error of his is being scrutinized like never before. Like honestly, Ramsdale made a lot of mistakes last season. He also saved us in quite a few matches, but I think Ramsdale also made his share of errors. But he was not scrutinized to this degree. It seems to me as though that people love Ramsdale, and I love Ramsdale as well. But that doesn't mean you need to tear down David Raya at every given opportunity. Like I don't get that from some fans personally. But what have you made of Raya so far? Has he convinced you, or do you think there's still room for improvement in terms of him cementing that number one spot? How do you see this situation panning out? And think of it from Ramsey's point of view. Your at on Twitter, of course, is Shamsdale, so you love him as well. Um, do you think Ramsdale leaves in January? Because as Ramsdale, it's a very easy decision to leave. Just think that you're Aaron Ramsdale for a second. You'll have a lot of teams interested in you, the Chelseas of this world, the Newcastles of this world, even Bayern have shown interest, and you could virtually get a move to even teams like Juventus, Dortmund, all these top European teams where you would start versus sitting on the bench at Arsenal, not playing Premier League, not playing Champions League, only playing the Carabao and FA Cup. What do you do if you're Aaron Ramsdale? And if you're Mikel Arteta, how do you solve this situation? What is your solution to this?
Yeah. With Raya, I think he was really good against Burnley, right? And he, like you said, he put in some really top saves, especially in one-on-one situations. I think those changed the course of the game a couple times. And I thought his distribution was pretty good as well. No glaring mistakes in that regard. Was pretty comfortable on the ball. But I will say, my concerns with Raya don't really have to do with him in like games against Burnley, right, or games against teams like in the midfield or sorry, in mid table or the bottom of the table. It's it's the big games, right, against City and Liverpool and in the Champions League.
Yeah.
Those are the games where I want to see more from Raya, especially from like a mental
Mm-hmm.
aspect. I think he just really gets in his head in those situations.
So,
But I'm not. It's like I said, a few pods ago about the backup quarterback situation, right?
mhm.
Where people are just waiting for Raya to make that mistake, and then they'll ask for Ramsdale to be put in instead. I don't think that's going to happen
No.
unless Raya is terrible for several games in a row. And I think he is moving in the right direction, right? I think he is starting to get it together in terms of his performances. He's adjusting to life at Arsenal. He's adjusting to playing in games of significance on a regular basis.
Yep.
So, yeah, I'm not particularly worried about Raya. But as for Ramsdale, yeah, I mean, I don't. I think we'd be lying to ourselves if we said that it's not a possibility he takes off in January, right?
Mm-hmm.
You had Southgate come out just the other day and say that if we get to the Euros and Ramsdale hasn't featured in 6 months, then he has, you know, his place in the squad would be at risk. And I don't think it's unreasonable to say that.
Honestly, though, screw Southgate, okay? Because
Oh yeah,
this guy didn't pick Ramsdale when he was a title challenging goalkeeper, and he picked Pickford, who almost got relegated. I don't know based on what. I think Ramsdale showed so much more quality than Pickford last season. So if I'm Arteta, I'm telling Ramsdale not to let that guy brainwash him into making a rash decision.
yeah. No, I definitely wouldn't leave just because of that. I mean, Southgate isn't going to pick Ramsdale over Pickford, right? He saw, like Venkatesh said, I agree with that sentiment.
Facts.
Um, Southgate chose Pickford because he's a highlight reel. Because again, Pickford is the starting goalkeeper for a guy or for a club that almost got relegated twice in a row,
Yeah.
right? And I think Ramsdale's a better keeper. Like you said, he was playing and starting for a team that was on a 100-point pace halfway through last season,
Yep.
and he still didn't get starts in the team. And now he's losing out to Johnstone, Sam Johnstone, I think it is, in friendlies. So I Aaron, don't change, don't make career moves based on what Gareth Southgate is going to do, especially because Southgate is not going to be manager of England after the Euros next summer. So wait and see how that shakes out. But like you said, there are some big clubs interested in him, right? Chelsea have been linked to him. Bayern have been linked to him. I think Bayern would be really interesting, right? Because that is an opportunity to be the guy for a decade
Mm-hmm.
at one of the best clubs in Europe, right? Arsenal are a big club, but Bayern are gargantuan, right?
Yeah.
And he has a chance to succeed Manuel Neuer and be that guy for a decade. And I think he has the capability to do it. And he'd be playing alongside guys like Sane and Gnabry and Kane, who all have experience with the English top flight. So I think he'd be at home after a while. Yeah, I think that's a really interesting opportunity if it arises, and he'd be a fool not to take it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are big clubs that will want Aaron Ramsdale, and I think during his time at Arsenal, he's shown that he is a player capable of handling that pressure. Sure, he has things he needs to work on, but he's 24, 25 now. That's still very
Mhm.
young for a goalkeeper. So, yeah, I think Europe is on notice now that the ceiling is very high for Ramsdale. So, if he gets a good offer, I don't see him turning it down, especially given his current situation at Arsenal. In terms of how Arteta solves it, I'm not really sure you can solve it outside of giving him more games. And there's going to have to be Premier League games and Champions League games if you want to convince Ramsdale to stay at the club. And I just don't think Arteta wants to really do that for all his talk about rotating keepers.
But would you do that
So
though? Because you made the point as well about Raya finding it hard to play multiple competitions and dealing with the pressure. So do you actually think that it might make sense to play Ramsdale in the Champions League for some games and give a rest to Raya for those games so that both the keepers are happy and also Raya's probably under lesser pressure and can integrate more seamlessly?
I think there are situations in which you could choose between Raya and Ramsdale based on their qualities. I think if you expect a team to um, press you high and leave in a lot of space behind, and really just put you under pressure, then I think Raya is probably the guy to go with there. But if you think you're going to go up against a low block or a team that will kind of sit off a little bit and let you play through them, I think Ramsdale is the better mid-range passer than Raya, and I think
Mhm.
that might be an option there. But I mean, it's you're very much splitting hairs after a certain point. So I think that's just kind of the risk that you take when you have two top level goalkeepers. Eventually, one of them is going to realize that they're wasting their time a little bit, and they're gonna leave in search of a situation that's more suited to what they deserve, based on their talent. So that's why most clubs don't really do this sort of thing. That's why most clubs have an established number one, number two. And I'd hoped that was a trend that we could buck, but it hasn't really worked out that way so far. So short of really just giving Raya and Ramsdale like a 50-50 split in terms of their games, and even that is very unorthodox and could be very, very disruptive for both of them. Um, yeah, I think Ramsdale, if he doesn't leave in January, is probably going to leave in the summer.
Yep. Absolutely. And I think Venkatesh here sums it up quite well. He says if Ramsdale goes, love him, but given the contract, we need the big bucks, Kepa world record fee, and more, please. Yeah, to be honest, if a club like Chelsea comes for Ramsdale, I think we absolutely have to milk them, Like this is a club that pays 100 million for Mudrik. And if they want to take England's best goalkeeper from their rivals, they better be willing to pay 70, 80 million. I'm not accepting 50 million or something like that. So they really have to break the bank. I think it could be a win for all parties, a win for Arsenal because we get the money and we can reinvest it. Also a win for Ramsdale because he has proved that he's a really good goalkeeper at Arsenal and he gets the move to Chelsea. And I don't think there's going to be any bad blood between him, the club, and Arteta as well because Arteta believed in him at a time when no one did and gave him the chance, literally burn Leno to allow him to play. So I think Ramsdale would also be grateful. So I think the story can have a happy ending no matter which way it pans out. And he also says if Arteta trusts Raya, he must have a reason. Got to stick with him as long as he's starting. Yeah, I agree with this, because honestly, every fan thinks that they're an expert. We all thought we were experts when we slandered Mikel for selling Leno and playing Aaron Ramsdale, who got relegated with Sheffield the season before. But I'm telling you, goalkeeping is something which there's more to it that than meets the eye. And I think for a position like this, especially as you explained, Sham, there's very little separating both the goalkeepers, at least based on what we are seeing. I would say that Raya's way better on the ball. But overall, if you look at what Ramsdale has also done for Arsenal, there's not much separating the two. But I think in a situation like this, you just have to trust the coaching staff. Obviously, our goalkeeping coach Inaki Sana has worked with David Raya in the past at Brentford, so I think we have to just give him the benefit of the doubt here, and hopefully we have a
There's
happy thing.
there's one thing that Raya
Hmm.
does that Ramsdale does not do, and that is in possession. Raya is willing to take the ball under more pressure and effectively function as another center back in build up, which creates that extra man for us further up the pitch. Ramsdale doesn't like doing that. He's on the record as saying that he doesn't like doing that. He doesn't like kind of pushing the ball as aggressively as Arteta asks him to do, and that's why Raya or Arteta's had his eye on Raya since like 2020, so he finally had an opportunity to go get that guy, and we know Arteta is a dog with a bone when it comes to players he likes.
Yeah.
So we're being linked to Douglas Luiz again.
Hmm.
So yeah, if he likes a player, he'll go get them, and you know, City have Ederson, Liverpool have Alisson, and I think Raya is closer to that kind of player than Ramsdale is. Just a little bit, not by a mile or anything, but I think Raya is just that little bit better at, like you said, playing with the ball and kind of functioning as a part of that back line in possession and really opening things up for us.
Yep, yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned about Arteta having interest in a player some years ago and then revisiting that interest in signing him. Another such player who was signed like that was Jorginho. Obviously, we had an interest in him back in 2020 at this transfer window where we signed Thomas Partey. It was reported at the time that Arteta also wanted Jorginho in addition to Thomas Partey. He wanted to play Jorginho at the base of midfield, Thomas Partey as the eight. And at the time, we didn't have an attacking midfielder, so that was a position where we wanted Hussein Owar at the time. Obviously, that didn't materialize, but he still gave us a really nice comp on Twitter, which will go on forever. So thank you, Mr. Awad. But I don't want to regress too much. But on this point, Jorginho, I want to speak about him because honestly, for 10 million, what Jorginho has given us is really impressive, in my opinion. He gets a lot of stick from people because he cannot run and all that. But I think, look, every player has a flaw, okay? The question is, can you balance out that flaw, or is it such a terrible flaw that there's no escaping it? For example, Rob Holding being poor on the ball, being slow athletically is not something you can offset as such, right? It's not something like you can offset with another player playing there unless you have, I don't know, Patrick Vieira, Gattuso, Cannavaro, and all these players surrounding him. Maybe it would work. But in the case of Holding last season, it was not something we could balance out. But Jorginho, in my opinion, is a player that you can balance out. You put Declan Rice next to him, you put Tomiyasu as the left back, and you obviously have that really physical foundation of Saliba and Gabriel, along with Ben White as a right back. I think it gives a good foundation to the team. And as a result of this, we are able, to play Jorginho in that position and allow him to do what he does well, which is actually build up, relieve pressure. I think he's a really intelligent player. Like some of his passes are really good. And I remember Sari saying this because, as football fans, we're all learning as well as the game evolves. He said in 2018, when he was Chelsea's coach and Kante was playing as a box to box player, there was this huge rant across social media. What is Sari smoking? Why isn't he playing Kante at the base of midfield? I don't get this. Kante is the best DM in the world, etc. And you know what Sari said? He said, Kante, yes, he's good on the ball, but Kante takes too long on the ball. He dwells on the ball. And this is the same point that Pep said regarding Schweinsteiger as well at Bayern. I remember this very well. At the time, Pep was benching Schweinsteiger or playing him a little more advanced than Schweinsteiger would normally play. And he was playing Philip Lahm as the number 6. And what Pep was saying is that no, Schweinsteiger takes too long on the ball. I want my six to be a player who, when he receives the ball in one touch, he will pass it. He will, attract opponents and then play the ball quickly. And that's what Jorginho does. I think he's one of the most underrated players, in the sport. Every single coach that he's worked with has appreciated his qualities. And I think in this period when Thomas Partey has been injured, I think he's been really instrumental for Arsenal in a number of matches. And this was not the case last season when Partey got injured in the first half of the season. We saw that Lokonga came in and we lost against United. We were far from convincing when Sambi was playing instead of Partey. But I just think right now, of course, with the addition of Declan Rice as well, that Rice, Jorginho, and Odegaard as a midfield three. Of course, it's been Havertz in recent games, but Jorginho and Rice in midfield, I think it gives Arsenal a really solid foundation. And I just want to ask you about Jorginho Sham because I'm not sure if you're a big fan of him because I know when we were initially linked with him, you didn't want it. In fact, when Jorginho was first linked with Arsenal, we were doing a podcast, and I was like, "Can you guess who we are linked with?" You were like, "Who?" And I was like, "Jorginho," and you were like, "Oh no, I don't know what to say about that one." But 10 months
Yeah,
have passed since then. Has your opinion changed on Georgie?
sure. Yeah, no, definitely. Well, first of all, I just want to say that was an unreal segue into the conversation about Jorginho.
Connecting
That
the
was
dots,
top. Yeah, top tier. 30 35 pods in, and we have mastered it. So that was no, that was excellent. I really enjoyed that. Yeah, so I do this thing called the Player Concern Index, where every couple of weeks I tweet out, the list of the roster, and I put like a certain color circle next to everybody's name, right? Green, orange, yellow, red. What those colors normally mean, right? Cedric
Yeah.
obviously has a red circle next to him. Um, so Jorginho, I tweeted out a couple days ago because we were entering the international break, and I did another PCI, and Jorginho for me went from a yellow circle to a green circle, and that's not to say that I think he's a perfect player or anything like that, but
Mhm.
I think you're absolutely right in that this is a guy who has an unreal level of talent, and we're talking about a guy at his peak. I think he's 31 now. This is a guy at the peak of his abilities. Just amazing talent, amazing ability, really good on the ball, really smart, really intelligent. Will absolutely become a manager when he retires. Um, and yeah, does he have faults? Absolutely. And I'm a guy who loves players with some dynamism, some pace and power. Jorginho doesn't have those things, but he's a guy who, if you put the right players around him, will flourish. And
Yeah.
I think you can say the same about like 90% of footballers, to be honest.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think you saw it against Sevilla in midweek. He had an
Mhm.
excellent pre-assist for, I think it was for Trossard's goal.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's just a guy who knows how to pull the strings. And if you put him in that armchair and you have, White and Saliba, or sorry, it wasn't White yesterday. It was Tomiyasu and Saliba and Gabriel behind him, and you have Zinchenko alongside him, and you have Rice in front of him, and you have Havertz, who's also willing to do some of the dirty work. Those
Yeah.
are those are plenty of guys who make up for that defensive lack of solidity there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Jorginho was excellent, and really just pulled the strings. He was in the armchair, so to speak, and yeah, I think he was really good, and he's been really good for us for the last few weeks. So I think we were all nervous initially that he would have to start at that sixth position for an extended period of time, and I think he's more than disproven people's concern.
Yeah, no, that's music to my ears, man. Coming from you, especially the guy who initially had doubts about Jorginho. But what I like about you as well is you're able to see things with some context, which a lot of people don't see. I remember you mentioned that you cannot play Jorginho and Zinchenko together, whereas the average football fan, they just go after the players, without trying to see what the broader concern is. Like against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, we had Zinchenko and Jorginho on the pivot, and you had Chelsea's physical players like Gallagher just bombing forward, and that's asking for trouble. So yeah, Football is, I think, about balancing things
And,
out.
and also, we have to remember the opposition, right? Burnley's a we're not talking about the Burnley from 3 seasons ago anymore.
No,
We're talking about a very technical,
yeah.
young, inexperienced side.
Lot of
So
hipsters, no thugs like before.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can, I still don't think it's entirely advisable, but you can play Zinchenko and Jorginho together against a
Mhm.
team like that, right? Because at that point, what you need is technicality or technical ability. You don't need necessarily the defensive solidity.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's all about context. I think it's all about the situation in which players are deployed. But yeah,
Yeah.
Jorginho against Zinchenko when they come to the Emirates, absolutely not. I do not want to see it. But you know,
Mhm.
it's just game by game.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's a great point. And on the subject of Zinchenko as well, before we get to that, we have a comment from Lalit Kaushik. He says, I feel there should definitely be a backup for Saka this January. It's lucky that Saka is in injury prone. I hope you haven't jinxed it here. In fact, I read a very funny tweet. I think it was from AI No New Thing, who said that there are, I think, different Bukayo Sakas and they're all playing. There are 3 or 4 Bukayo Sakas because the amount Saka gets kicked, it's crazy how fit he is and how durable he is. And I know every time when Saka goes down on Twitter, there's this huge meltdown like, Mikel, how dare you play my son and make him play this many games? How dare you? But I think sometimes, yeah, for these things, you just have to leave it to like the fitness experts and the coaching staff to like take care of it. But very quickly, Sham, if you could sign one player in January for 60 million, like you have 60 million, you can sign one player as of today, okay? Because of course things can change in football. Knowing Arsenal will suddenly have an injury crisis post Christmas and our plans would completely change. But as of today, November 13th, 2023, if you were given 60 million to spend players on in January, who would you look to sign?
So I just want to say first of all, Lalith, I've got an evil eye bracelet on. So hopefully you did not jinx us that much. This is why I wear the bracelet for. Um,
Came prepared.
yeah, I think it okay. So I really want Fofana from Monaco. I don't think Fofana would cost 60 million because he's got 18 months left on his contract, but I think what I want to accomplish in January are two things. One, I want to get another defender in there, either a right-sided center back or a right back, preferably. Um, Actually, no, probably a right-sided center back for the long term. I just want to get another body in there because we're going to be playing a lot of games. We're going to miss Timber, we're going to miss Tomiyasu, we're going to miss Party, and those are all guys who can play at the right back position. So I just want to be able to just adapt to situations in which we don't have all of our players and we have to deal with injuries back there. But the other thing I want to accomplish is I want to start the process of moving away from Thomas Party. And I think, if it's not Fofana, then that's fine. Fofana is the guy I want personally, but we're getting linked to Douglas Luiz, who can play 6 or 8. But I think you just need to start bringing in someone else who can take over that role and make us less reliant on a guy who up until now has played what, like 20 minutes this
Yeah.
season. So yeah. So those are the things I want to do. As for getting a backup for Saka, I understand wanting to do that, but I just think we have a lot of options in his position, right? I think you have Reese Nelson, who's shown that he can play right wing pretty well. You have Jesus, who I think is very effective in that role, and then of course, we have multiple guys who can play at center forward in his stead.
Mhm.
Havertz, I think, can play right wing okay ish,
You'll
and then
never
I think
know.
Fabio. Yeah, I mean, I'd rather not play him on the wing, but
So,
I think Fabio Vieira is also a pretty underrated option there. So, and push comes to shove, you can always move over Martinelli and play someone at left wing as well. So, I think we have enough guys there who can play right wing at a fairly solid level. And it's just about managing Saka's minutes and making sure that you still have him available for, the really important games. But
yeah.
I don't think I don't think signing a striker or signing a right winger is the paramount priority at this point in time.
Yeah. No, you mentioned Fabio Vieira. I think after the death stare Arteta gave him when he was walking after being sent off, I don't think he's seeing pitch for some weeks at least.
That was his chance, man. He blew it.
Yeah, it's horrible that when we have injuries, the guys who are supposed to come in also end up like getting injured or doing something stupid. But anyway,
Yeah.
it's part of the sport. And I guess the question that I really want to ask you, like, if you can just answer this, like, you gave a really nice detailed explanation. But if you could answer this question, you have 60 million. You can either sign Zubimendi or Pedro Neto, who might cost a bit more, but let's just assume for argument's sake, would you sign the best midfielder available or the best winger available? And you can sign only one player because I don't think Arsenal are going to do multiple signings. So if you could do one, would you go for the midfielder or the winger?
Midfielder. Yeah,
Midfielder.
I
Yeah,
think I
same.
think I'd go for midfielder. I just think I think we're in a place right now where um I mean if we break it down, right? Rice is excellent, no complaints.
Mm-hmm.
Jorginho has been very good, but again, this guy is 31. He is a guy who you can't play in certain situations, right? So you just need another option sometimes.
Yeah.
You have Party, who is made of glass and might never play another game for Arsenal Football Club again. Um,
Yeah.
you have you have Fabio Vieira, who I don't think has proven himself at this point in time, and um, is not a reliable option at this point in time, right?
Yeah.
Emil Smith Rowe, same situation as Party, and then Kai Havertz, jury's still out on him, right? So, oh, and then of course, Martin Odegaard, very good player, but unavailable at this particular moment in time. So it's a very iffy midfield situation. So I
Yeah.
think we're going to see some departures in midfield this summer for sure. And I think January is a good time for us to, both in the short term and the long term, just beef up the midfield a little bit and bring in some more talent, preferably some more like either another six or like a direct attacking eight. I think
Yeah.
either of those would be very welcome.
Yeah. No, that's a good point because I think there's two ways you can move on from Thomas Partey. You bring in an elite six and replace him directly, or you bring in an elite eight and put Declan Rice there. And I think this is why Arteta spent 100 million on Rice because he gives you multiple solutions, multiple ways of like building a squad. So that's a good headache to have, I think. And I'm sure Arsenal will make a good decision for the next midfielder that we sign. So look forward to that. But speaking about midfielders, we also have a defender who can play in midfield, and his name is Zinchenko, a player who I've criticized a lot. I think rightly so as well. But what I've also said is that in 30% of the games, he should be used. We're talking Sheffield home, Burnley home, and against teams like this, that sit deep and allow Arsenal to have the ball. I think he's really good against teams like this. Also, teams that don't have a transitional threat. And I thought against Burnley, from what the game I saw, I thought he was one of the best players on the pitch. Even his goal was very well taken. So I just want to say, yeah, because I criticize him when he plays badly, I will also praise him when he does well. So Sham, what are your thoughts on Zinchenko's performance against Burnley? Do you think this is something surprising, or do you think like yeah, against teams like this, when you give him that space, there's few left backs who can do what he does, and he showed, I think, his uniqueness and class, didn't he?
Yeah, I think it was definitely a game to play Zinchenko, right? I,
Mhm.
I don't think you could have picked a much better game for Ben White to maybe have to sit out. And then you move Tomiyasu to right
By
back.
the way, sorry to cut you off there. You jinxed Ben White last podcast. You said, what if Ben White gets injured? We have this run of games in November and December, and boom, he's out the very next week.
First of all, that was 2 podcasts ago. Second, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I wasn't wearing the bracelet
Even that
that day.
didn't work.
He's
Look,
he,
that doesn't
he's
work
he's
against yourself, I think. It only works against others.
yeah. He's played a lot of minutes. He's played a lot of minutes. Hopefully it sounds like it was more of a precaution than anything.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, he has 2 weeks to rest up, so hopefully it's not super serious, and we'll see him back after the
Yeah.
break. But
Mhm.
yeah, again, best game for him to miss was home to Burnley, right? Because that's a team that's not it's not a team that you necessarily need like pace and power to break through. It's more of a team that you can overcome with a lot of technical quality, which Zinchenko has, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it was really good. If I remember correctly, he had like 116 touches in the game, which is crazy. But yeah, he was really pulling the strings on the day. On the day, it was him, Saliba, and Jorginho, who I think all had a ridiculous number of touches,
Sure.
and yeah, we're just kind of controlling things for Arsenal. So I thought he looked really good. I noticed he was advancing forward a lot throughout the game. And of course, that scissor kick from him, I think, was very good as well.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't really think my opinion on Zinchenko has changed that much, right? Again, this is a guy who is a very unique kind of player, right? He is kind of like a pseudo midfielder, left back,
Yeah.
occasional attacking midfield kind of hybrid role. But the guy is not terrific 1v1, right?
No. No.
So in games where you're coming up against, like Cole Palmer or Jeremy Doku or
I'm not
Pedro
scared of
Neto,
Cole Palmer. I'm not scared of Cole Palmer yet. I'm
I
not scared of
I don't know.
him.
I think Cole Palmer looked really good against City. To be honest, maybe that's because he's playing against a team that he knows very well.
I think he's
But
more of an Odegaard type player, Like, like if I was facing Odegaard, I'm not going to be scared of my fullback getting skinned alive by him. Like, I think he's more of that creative player who does some nice touches. So I
yeah,
think he can get away with Palmer. But yeah,
yeah,
Doku, I agree. But to be fair, Zinchenko stopped Doku as well. And
that's
there was
true.
a couple of situations where Doku was 1v1 and Mikel was like, no, he can't stay on the pitch any longer. And he took him off.
Zinchenko against Doku felt like Kevin Love defending Steph Curry on the 3-point line in the final game of the 2016 NBA Finals. That's what that felt like. Just an absolute nightmare mismatch, David v Goliath kind of thing. But I think Zinchenko is a very good player when you use him correctly. It's just that I think we're hitting a point where teams are taking us very seriously. Teams are
Mhm,
treating us differently. We're in a lot more high stakes games, a lot more intense games.
mhm,
And, Zinchenko is a guy who's been identified as a weakness. He's a guy who teams will look to attack, and he's a guy who, doesn't offer that dynamism that maybe a Tomiyasu or a Timber does in that role. So, again, this is the perfect game scenario for him. But I'm not going to sit here and say that, when Newcastle come to the Emirates or when we go to the Etihad, he needs to start. I think if anything, this just kind of proved my point a little bit about the kind of player he is. But again, excellent goal from him and really terrific performance. And if we need him again, then I feel a little bit better about having to rely on him.
yeah, no, for sure. And you spoke about the control that he brings, which I completely agree with. And I think, yeah, against a team like Burnley, you need that player who can help you in the build up. But I also think against Burnley, the way we ended up beating them was set pieces. And one of the players who scored was William Saliba, who scored from a brilliant header. And I was a bit scared, obviously, when it's like 1-1, like what the hell is going on? And then Saliba, of course, scores the goal to make it 2-1. And I think after Saliba's goal, there was a lot of discourse about him on the timeline, like how great he is. And sometimes it has to take a player to score a goal like that for everyone to acknowledge, like, wait, this guy's an absolute beast, like to actually see some of the other things that he also does on a football pitch. And I just wanted to ask you, do you think he's the best center back in the world right now, or is he a top three center back in the world? How would you rank the center backs in the world, and where does Saliba really come there? Because in terms of young center backs, I think he is the best center back in the world, in my opinion. I don't see anyone else who's better than him. In terms of the seasoned center backs, if you ask me a question, would you take Ruben Diaz or Saliba on your team? I will take Saliba on my team personally. I think Saliba has more than Diaz in terms of his qualities. Of course, he's not won what Diaz has won, but I think the impact Saliba has had at Arsenal as a 21, 22-year-old defender coming into the hardest league in the world, into a team that historically was never amazing defensively and turned us into one of the best defensive outfits in Europe. I think that's testament to how good a player he is. And you saw last season as well when he got injured. Despite the brilliance of Rob Holding, we were not able to cope in Saliba's absence. So I think he's probably one of our most important players. And for me, he is the best centre back in the Premier League after Virgil van Dijk currently. I know people will say Van Dijk declined XYZ, but for me, Van Dijk is Van Dijk. I think he's still the best defender in the world. And I would put Saliba in my top three in the world, honestly, in terms of ability, because people are just judging him based on what he's won. And true, he's not won anything major, but what he's done to help such a young side compete with a team with 115 financial fraud allegations is something very special. So where do you put Saliba in terms of the best centre backs in the world?
Okay. Let's play a rapid fire game. I've Googled best center backs in the world, and I'm
Mhm.
on a 90 minutes article with the 25 best. So I'm just going to
Mhm.
scroll through and I'll read off the name, and then we'll both say yes or no in terms of whether
Oh,
we take
I like that.
Saliba over them.
Yep.
Okay. Milan Skriniar.
No.
No. Marquinhos from PSG.
No.
Dio Upamecano.
No.
No. Sven Botman.
No.
No. Jules Koundé.
No.
Manuel Akanji.
No way.
Gleason Bremer. I don't know why he's on this list.
Oh my god, I wouldn't take him ahead of Kiwi or let alone Saliba.
Ooh, okay. Here's a tough one for you. Christian Romero.
No way. It's so straightforward for me. Like so
I don't
straightforward.
know.
Saliba's levels ahead, man. Levels ahead.
I think Romero's ability to get very unnecessary red cards can be valuable in some contexts.
Yeah. If you're playing
Uh,
FPL and your friend has Romero, then it can be a good thing.
yeah. Matthias Delict or
No,
Delight? Is it Delight or Delict?
I say Delict, but no,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. No.
Maybe a few years
Uh,
ago when Delict was killing it for Ajax, maybe, but now I've seen Delict enough and nah,
yeah.
not for me.
Andreas Christensen.
No, who wrote this article? Oh my god, there's some dreadful names here.
The butcher himself, Lissandro Martinez.
No chance.
Alessandro Bastoni.
No chance.
Eder Militao.
No. No way.
And Nathan Ake.
No.
Thiago Silva.
No. I mean, Thiago Silva when he was in his prime was so good. Honestly, I think he was on Saliba's level, but currently you can see he's old and he's unathletic right
Uh,
now.
Okay, we're in the top 10.
Okay.
Well, Josko Gavardiol.
No way, man. No way.
Okay, number 9 is William Saliba himself, so we're gonna skip. Ronald Araujo.
No
Araujo.
way. How the hell is he ahead of Saliba? Like what the hell?
What about Champions League Rafael Varane?
No way. No, no way. Not in big 2023, man. Not in 2020.
Kim Min Jae.
What the hell? How is he ahead of Saliba? Based on what? He's a good player, don't get me wrong, but how is he ahead of Saliba?
Virgil van Dijk.
Yeah, I think Van Dijk is one player I would still say is ahead of Saliba.
I think Van Dijk is probably still good enough where I'd take him.
Yeah.
But that gap is narrowing every day for
No,
me.
I mean, it's not huge. It's not huge. I remember some seasons ago, Mikel was like, look at Van Dijk. He plays a 40-yard pass from the center back position to the right wing to Trent. That is quality. There is no substitute for quality. But Saliba is doing that for us as well. Maybe diagonals is not his specialty, but the way he drives forward with the ball, takes it out and beats the press, net is the same. So he's getting
For
that.
sure. Yeah. Antonio Rudiger.
No, no, no way.
John Stones.
So it's a difficult one because John
Yeah.
Stones is a very good player. But I would take Saliba ahead of Stones because I think Saliba is more athletic player than Stones. And I don't think there's a huge difference. There's not a big difference between the two. But I would still say Saliba edges it. How about you?
Yeah, Stones is one of the two that I think the hardest about
Yeah,
still when comparing with Saliba, right? The other obviously is Van Dijk. I think Stones is a world class center back,
yeah,
right? And I think he is athletic to an extent, right? I think he's very versatile. I think he's immensely technical, very gifted player. But I think I would take Saliba over him a little, like not by much, right? It's not a big distance or anything, but I think Saliba, just the coolness about him and his ability under pressure, and he's the complete package as
yeah,
a center back, right? He's got that athleticism, that dynamism, he's got speed and physicality and strength, and he is just tremendous on the ball. The guy sometimes looks like a 6'4" Cazorla on the
yeah,
ball.
yeah.
So yeah, I think I would take Saliba over him. Okay, last
What
two.
what I
David
would say,
Alaba. Sure,
sorry, what I
sorry.
would say is when John Stones first came to Man City, he had already played in the Premier League for a few seasons. I thought he was very underwhelming for his first 2 or 3 seasons at City. For the price City paid, 50 million was a lot at the time. For the
Yeah.
price City paid versus what they expect. Of course, he's grown into a world class player, but Saliba has come in straight away and elevated a team to this level. That's why I would give Saliba the benefit of the doubt. When two players are on a similar level, I go with the player who's younger, and that's Saliba, who's made the more of an instant impact. That's against Saliba.
That's true. Yeah. I will say John Stones had the last laugh after the Wenger quote about him and Rob Holding. Um, but
Rob
but yeah,
Holding won
I
two FA Cups for Arsenal. No, but
I'm
Stones
sorry
won
he
everything.
didn't cost.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry he didn't cost 55 million. Yeah. So David Alaba.
It's a bit of a tough one. I think at centre back, I go with Saliba. I think Saliba is a better centre back. But in terms of versatility, I think David Alaba is the more versatile player. But we're speaking about the best centre backs in the world. So I go with Saliba, definitely.
And then the last one's Ruben Diaz.
Saliba for me. Saliba
Yeah,
for me. I
I
think
think
Saliba is just Ruben Diaz. I think Saliba is more quicker, more athletic. Not to take anything away from Diaz. Phenomenal player, by the way. But I just think Saliba is better than Diaz. And Diaz, of course, plays for the best team in the world. Again, a team with 115 financial allegation breaches. So he plays for that sort of side. Saliba plays for a young Arsenal side and has shown more. So yeah, I go with Saliba.
yeah, I think if you asked me this question last year, I would have taken Diaz.
Hmm.
This year, I think I pick Saliba. Just because again, I don't see any weaknesses in Saliba's game. Um, and I think Diaz is a guy you can rile up a little bit, and I think he's just a little bit less of an athlete than Saliba is. And Saliba's younger. So um, yeah, so I mean that was a really fun game to play, and I think it shows exactly where we rank Saliba among all these guys. And I'll put it like this, right? I think when we had this bit of a controversy with Saliba being out on loan and people being convinced that Arteta was going to sell him and get rid of him because of some little tiff, I, even when the sound bites did not sound great, I still always was pretty sure that we were going to hold on to Saliba just
Hmm.
because of how good he was, right? Every time I saw this guy play, I was like, he's special. He's going to be generational. There's no way. Even if you must have gotten into the biggest fight with this guy if you do not want to keep him at the club. So, I was very adamant that we were going to hold on to him and that Arteta just had a plan that maybe people did not agree with. So yeah, I'm very very grateful. Things panned out in that fashion, and he's at the club because I think him and Declan Rice and Bukayo Saka, those three players, I think single handedly can take you to glory. So yeah, just amazing player.
Yeah, yeah, no, just could not say this better myself, and absolutely blessed to have a player like this playing for Arsenal. Like, especially we've grown up seeing guys like Mustafi, Socrates, players like Galas who started crying on the pitch. So, you know, first of all,
Don't forget Scalacci and Silvestre.
yeah, yeah. Oh my God, don't remind me of them. Johan Giroud as well. We've
Oh
grown up
my
with
god.
some real banter players at centre back, and we have one of the best centre backs in the world. Like, the reason why Arsenal fans have that hype and give that hype is because we've been through a lot with centre backs in the past. Even the guy who was good like Koscielny, he left in tears. So, like, we've had some dark days with centre backs, and it's great to have a really solid padding.
I've got one more question about Saliba for you.
Yeah,
Do you think he would start for the Invincibles? Because I think he would.
yeah. I think he would start ahead of Kolo Toure, and it's not a disrespect to Kolo Toure. He's
Yeah.
a great player. What he did that season was exceptional. What he's done over his career is exceptional. But I just think Saliba's level is that he is him, and yeah,
Yeah,
I think
no, absolutely. So I would also start him over Torre. I think he's a better player than Torre ever was, and I think also just Saliba, when he speaks, I hear an invincible, if that makes sense, right? When he speaks, I hear a guy who could have been hanging out with Henri and Vieira in the locker room.
yeah.
He just has that aura about him and that personality and that super deep voice that just makes you want to trust him in moments of pressure. So, yeah, I just think he's the complete package, man. He is excellent, excellent player.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And we're already at 1 hour and 11 minutes of the pod. Didn't seem like that. It's just flown by. And I think this is a logical point to end the podcast. But before that, I want to ask one final question. Arsenal have played 12 Premier League games, as have all the other teams. We're on 27 points, tied with Liverpool, who of course have one goal difference better than us, but we're both 1 point behind Manchester City. When you consider all the injuries, I think personally this is a pretty decent start of the season, all things considered. I know we got knocked out of the Carabao Cup, but we're top of our Champions League group, 9 points in total command to go through to the round of 16. So if at the start of the season you were offered this start, you would have definitely taken it. I think most people would have taken it.
Hundred
So
percent.
I know, to be honest, like the mood this season has been not so good. I think amongst the fan base, including maybe even us, like even on this podcast, like we've been a bit edgy about Arsenal. Like, ooh, it's not convincing. This is not good. That is not good. And look, it's not always been pretty on the eye. But still, having said that, the way the media speak about Spurs as this next huge club that is coming up and going to tear apart the league versus Arsenal, a side with multiple injuries, playing Champions League football for the first time in 7 years. I think all things considered, Arsenal have done quite well. Silently, we have got the points despite being ridiculed by the media and maybe our own fans, maybe myself as well. I take the blame. Like sometimes I myself have been a bit annoyed with how we are playing. But Sham, if you just look at it on paper, it's pretty good, right?
It's more than pretty good. I think we've had a very good season so far, and it might not feel like that, but I think that's down to several things, right? I think for me, I don't want to speak for anybody else in this regard, but I
Mm-hmm.
think for me, I was scared entering this season because we were coming off the back of this amazing season in which we found ourselves in a title race. We
Mm-hmm.
broke our points record. We suffered this really awful heartbreak at the end, but we looked special, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I entered the season not like believing this, but just, there was a thought in the back of my head, just kind of thinking, what if last season was an anomaly? What if last season just everything kind of broke exactly the right way for us to go on a title challenge? And is that, are we really good, or are we really as good as we hope we are?
Mm-hmm.
So I think what I've seen this season is that we are, right. And yeah, we're not attacking as freely as we might like, maybe. And I think a lot of people are complaining about whether the style of football we play is exciting. I think that's a secondary concern for
Okay.
me because it's very functional, right? It's very practical and it works. And
Mm-hmm.
for me personally, I would rather watch us win than watch us, continually find ourselves week after week in like 4-2s and 5-3s and 3-1s, right? Um, and we just look dominant. We look very, very dominant. We held City to what, like I think it was 3 or 4 shots,
Yeah.
right? We almost entirely shut out Sevilla. Like,
Yeah.
they took one shot at the end.
We shut out
Um,
Everton at Goodison Park as well, which we normally get destroyed in that ground. So that was, I think, a big positive
yeah,
as well.
yeah. We control games, and I think there is a lot to be desired in the way we attack. Right. I'm not going to sit here and say that's perfect or anything, but I think there are reasons for that.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're missing some key personnel. I think players are not making the best decisions in the final third.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've been up against some very stingy defenses, right? We've played Newcastle and Chelsea and Manchester City, which are all very highly ranked defenses. And we're up against teams that are just parking the bus against us and letting us figure it out. Um, so, there are reasons for that. And yeah, I mean, I'm feeling good, and I think people are just kind of looking at us and then looking at Liverpool being in a shootout every week, and looking at City, get easy penalties and stroll 2 wins, and just kind of letting themselves get carried away a little bit. But I think we've had a very good season so far, and we're right there. We are in position to compete for a title, which is all you can really ask for.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I also think this international break is a good thing for us because we have Odegaard, who hopefully will be back to full fitness. We'll have Gabriel Jesus back as well. Obviously, going to go through a crucial run of fixtures after the international break. December is going to be quite interesting. It's the festive period. We go to Anfield. So, there's some big games coming up. And I think it's going quite well because, of course, we're going to have injuries to Thomas Partey. And Timber, which seems to be long term. But I think some of the others are coming back, and I think that's going to be crucial. And having considered the injuries we have, because it seems like Arsenal is the only team that doesn't get sympathy from anyone for having injuries. We're called bottlers when players get injured. And while I do agree that we partly bottled at the end of last season, I think we did, the same standard is not there for the other teams, like when City were without Rodri, people were like, they don't have their best team. Rodri is so important for them, blah, blah, blah. But when the moment our best centre back, Saliba's gone, no one had that sort of sympathy for us. So we've done very well, I think, to cope with the injuries that we've had, with the struggles that we have had in certain positions and still find ways to win. So I think that's a big positive.
Yeah, I mean, you have Kieran Trippier walking up to people in the stands and saying, "How many injuries do we have?" No one cares, dude. This is the big time now, right? Your squad needs to be winning.
I'm so happy seeing Newcastle lose games. I'm so happy. The fans are telling me things like, "Oh, that's because we are a big club now. Look at how well we're playing," and that's why fans like Arsenal are happy that we're losing. I'm like, no, I didn't like Stoke City as well. There are certain clubs that I just don't like, and Newcastle, after the recent games, are one of those clubs. I cannot stand them at all. Um, and yeah, happy to see them lose, and hopefully they continue to lose as well.
Yeah, I mean they'll have fun in the Europa League this season. So
Yep. Yep. No, I'm very happy about that. But no, this is a good international break. Arsenal winning in the weekend, in a good position in the table. There can be some peace and tranquility for at least the next 10 to 12 days. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to that. But it's been a pleasure to have you all on the show and do this podcast. It's been a great podcast, especially for the start of the week when Sham and I are always a bit annoyed at the start of the week because of we have 4 more days to go. Today, I think we can all be really happy after the week events yesterday with City being held at Stamford Bridge and Arsenal winning. I think it's a good place to go into the international break. And of course, we will be back with the podcast right after the international break. And Sham, I want you to do the honors for this, please, because you're the good luck charm. We play Brentford next, so
sure, yeah. So we will be back with you after an emphatic win against Brentford. But until then, stay safe, stay well, and we will talk to you soon. Bye bye.
Thank you, Sham. There's just one more thing I forgot to say. Thank you for
Sure.
tuning in. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We would really appreciate it if you could tap that subscribe button. You can also follow Sham on Twitter at Shamsdale for some good content. He's not only a troll, he also speaks a lot of football. So please check him out. Yes, that's some good stuff. You can follow me on Twitter at LT Arsenal, although don't panic if you don't see any tweets from me in the next 7 days. I think I need a break from that cesspit of a platform so that I can come back into it with a fresh mind. But until then, thank you guys. Take care. And as Sham says, talk to you soon. Bye bye.